In this video, we're going to look at the amazing World Wide Web. What is the web? Basically, it's composed of a bunch of websites, millions and millions of websites all around the globe. And on those websites are many, many web pages, and each of the web pages has lots of HTML code on them. Okay, what is HTML code? Well, basically, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it consists of tags and text. And the tags are basically these green things here. They tell the browser how to format particular pieces of text. In the old days, in the original days on the web, we had to create websites using this. We had to type in all of the tags, and if we made one mistake, we didn't spell the tag exactly right, it didn't work too well. It didn't look too good. Okay, nowadays we have programs that do it automatically for us, but it was a real hard thing to do in the old days. Now, what does HTML do? Well, basically, this is just ordinary, plain, vanilla text. Okay, nothing special here. But when we change it into HTML, if we change it, we can do this. We can have all sorts of different colors, different fonts, different styles, and we can have these certain kind of text which is blue and has an underline. That usually stands for what? That stands for a hyperlink, okay? Hyperlink. And hyperlinks do what? They basically link to another web page. And you can have one web page linked to another web page, and you can see all these different links going on here. And pretty soon, after you've got all these links, it kind of looks like what? It looks like a web, okay? That's why they call it the web, okay? The World Wide Web. Now, you need a program to read the web pages, and we call that program the web browser. And there's a bunch of different programs. There's Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari, and Microsoft Edge. If you're using Windows 10, of course, that's the new one that kind of replacing Internet Explorer. Now, it's interesting to see how, over the years, some browsers became more popular and became unpopular. If you have some time, just click on this link here. It's a very interesting video to see how some browsers became more popular and then less popular. Very nice to see. There is this thing called the Uniform Resource Locator, or URL. The engineers love these three-letter acronyms, and basically all that means is it's a web address. It's the address of a particular thing, a resource on the internet. And everything, all the web pages, all of the pictures that are out there, all have a unique URL. And for example, a URL could be down here at the bottom, and they're composed of different parts. At the beginning, you have the web protocol standard. Okay, in this case, it's HTTP, which is the protocol used by the web. Then over here, you have a folder name, and basically folders are just a way of enabling the website developer to organize the files, because they may have thousands and thousands of files on a web page. And then you have the document, okay, the individual document. In this case, it has an extension HTML, which means it's an HTML file. And the most important part, of course, is the domain name, the part in the center. That's the company that's paying for the site. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And again, that's the protocol that's used by the web. And the protocol is basically just a set of rules. We all have protocols. The computers have protocols, and we as humans have protocols. We interact with each other based on a certain standard protocol, depending on what situation we're in and what kind of people we are. And if we break the protocol, then it becomes difficult for us to communicate with each other. Understandings happen, and sometimes fights happen because we're not following the protocol. But anyway, computers don't have fights with each other, but they have to follow the protocol, because computers are not that smart. Remember, they need a protocol that they can follow. And basically, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol is basically what it does. It just is a way of sending and receiving web items to a web browser. There are many different protocols. The three most important ones are HTTP, which is for websites, FTP, which is transferring files. Again, that's used by website developers for transferring large files up to the website server. And then VoIP, which of course is very popular for people getting their phone service through their cable company. Now, the domain name is composed of different parts. At the beginning, you have a subdomain. In the old days, we had to type in www. It's not needed really too much anymore. we have the domain there, the actual domain of facebook.com. And at the end, we have this little extension there. It's the top level domain. Okay, top level domain. And what does that do? Basically, the top level domain basically tells like what kind of domain it is, what kind of domain. And .com, of course, we know that is a commercial site. .edu is an educational site. .gov is a government site. .org is a nonprofit organization. .us means it's a site in the United States, and .ca is in Canada. And these are country codes here. Every country in the world has a two-letter abbreviation, two-letter country code. And most sites outside the United States make use of that two-letter code. If you, for example, go to Facebook in France, you'll see a country code .fr at the end of the web address. But in the U.S., we don't see that too much. Okay, we just type in facebook.com or instagram.com. We don't see the .us at the end. Why is that? Well, basically, it's because the internet was invented here. Okay, and there was a time when all of the sites, all of the websites were in the United States. So it seemed kind of redundant to put .us on there because everything was in the U.S. at that time. Now, of course, very different. We've got billions of sites all around the world. At some point, we probably will start putting .us here just to be like all the other countries in the world, but that'll come in the future sometime. Now, the .coms it's really hard to get a good .com site anymore. All the good ones are taken. And so what happened is they came up with a bunch of other top-level domains. There's about 1,000 of them. This is the first few. And you can see that for any type of company you're in, whether you're an accountant, an actor, or an adult site. Won't talk about that. Okay, but there's all different kinds of sites there, and you can choose whatever kind of business you're in. You can get a top-level domain that matches that. Now, it's in truth, I don't think some of these are not very popular. The long ones especially, because nobody wants to type these things out. But the short ones seem to be pretty popular. Okay, now domain names and IP addresses. We, as humans, we use domain names. For example, Microsoft.com. Okay, but the computers, they use the IP address. And that's just a bunch of numbers, 4 numbers separated by periods. Okay, so, and somehow the domain name that we type in gets translated into the IP address so that the computers know where to send the information. How does that happen? Well, that happens because of this thing called the Internet Phone Book. It's actually the real name for it is the Domain Name Server, DNS. And that converts the domain name that we type in into the IP address that the computers actually use. And which DNS you use? Well, your ISP, for example, Cablevision or your cable company, will give you an ISP. But you can get your own, okay? The ISP they give you may not be the best. It's better to choose your own. And there are 2 great places to get it. Number one is OpenDNS, and Google has its own one too. So either one of these are really good, and they're pretty good. They keep track of the domain so that it's much less likely you go to a bad domain because it's just not listed in their phone book. Now, you can get your own domain, okay? Instead of having have mail at Gmail, you can have your mail address being actually your name.com. And if you have a fairly common name, it's probably already taken. But if your name is somewhat unusual, it's probably not taken, then you can go out and get it. It's first come, first choice. So if you have, try to get it right now. How to do it? Well, basically, you go to a site like hover.com or GoDaddy.com. I use Hover a lot. GoDaddy.com is very, very popular. So either one of these, just go to the site and try to see if your name is available as a domain. And if not, then you can do some variations on it to see if you can get it there. But if you do want to do it as soon as possible before someone else takes it. Search engines, there was a time when you couldn't find things on the internet. You had to know it was there. Someone told you to go to a particular site. Now, of course, we have these search engines, so we can just type in a search term and it'll point us to a particular site most of the time. There are many different there's a good number of them. And of course, Google is the big player here. That's the one that's most popular. If you look at a graph, you can see it's way, way more popular than all the other ones out there. Now, when you're searching for something, just a couple of tips here. First of all, realize that Google will not find everything on the internet. There are many, many, many things that Google will not find. And Google will show you different results to different people. So depending, Google's constantly watching you, seeing what you're interested in. So it's going to tailor the results to fit what it thinks your particular needs and desires are. And of course, avoid any toolbars. If Google ever says to ask you if you want to put a toolbar into your browser, don't do it. It just takes up space and slows you down. And by the way, any free program, just be real leery of putting it and installing any free program on your computer. Okay, and when you're doing term papers, just remember, search engines are not sources. So when you do a citation, don't cite Google. Google just merely points to sources. So put the source in the citation. Okay, now why do certain search results appear at the top of the list? Okay, well, basically, Google and the other sites rank these sites by relevance. So it tries to figure out which is the most important, which is the one that you would most like to see. Okay, it also has sponsored links. Okay, and you can see those and which site would probably be better, which search result would be better. Okay, well, probably the unsponsored link. Okay, sponsored links are there because they were paid to be there, but the other ones are better. Now, there is this job category called SEO, Search Engine Optimization. Companies want their websites to appear at the top of the results, okay, because that's the one that people click. And they definitely want their sites to appear on the first page of the results. How many times have you looked for something on Google and then you went to the second page to look for it? Not too often, right? Third page, never. If you're a business, you want your business to appear on that first page. And there are certain techniques that you can use to make sure that your site appears on that first page. And that technology is called search engine optimization. And it's actually a pretty good way to make money. Businesses will pay a lot of money for that information. So it's just basically getting your site to be highly ranked on their search results. Now, how does Google find all these pages that it's showing to you? Well, basically, it has these programs called spiders. And the spiders just basically, you think of them as crawling around the web, going from one web page to another web page, following all those links, those hyperlinks, until it sees basically as many pages on the internet as it could. It keeps all that information on this giant computer, this server farm, a huge building out in Oregon someplace. And that's when you do a search on Google, that's what it does. It goes through that and gives you the results right there. It basically goes around. Now, there are these things called cookies, and they're not the kind of things that you would drink or eat with a glass of milk. No, okay, these are something different. They're basically small text files which a website will attach to your browser. And it basically helps to identify you. Okay, so think of this when you were in high school and you went to an event at the school gymnasium, you paid to get in there, and maybe somewhere halfway through you say, "Oh, I want to go outside for some fresh air." Well, when you come back in, you don't want to pay again. So what they did was they people at the door would stamp your hand, sometimes with an invisible ink stamp. And then they would know that you already paid and they won't charge you again. Okay, so this is what a cookie is on a browser. Okay, it's a little thing that's attached to your browser and it basically identifies you. So for example, if you go to Amazon.com, the first time you go there, you have to put in your username and your password. And then the next time you go, do you want to put in your username and password again? Not likely. It gets kind of tedious. So what Amazon does is it attaches a cookie to your browser. So when you come the second time, it looks for that cookie, it sees it, and it says, aha, this is Rich Malloy. He's a good guy, so we'll let him in without asking for his password. Okay, so these cookies help to identify you. Now, people have used this to track you when you go around to the web. And they take this information and sell it to advertisers. So there are these things called malicious cookies, which basically just track you, see where you go on the internet. And if you want to keep that information private, you probably want to get rid of those tracking cookies as much as you can. Now, just be aware, cookies do not damage or reveal your files, okay? They're not like viruses. They're just they're just text files which attach to your browser. Okay, e-commerce. Basically, as you know, there's a lot of business being done out on the web, and we have different types. In fact, we have these three-letter acronyms that describe it. We have B2C, business to consumer, B2B, business to business, and C2C, consumer to consumer. Okay, and if we just go through there and just name this particular type, Amazon, what kind of company that is that? Well, that's a business that sells to whom? That sells to consumers, sells to us consumers. So it's a B to C, B to C. eBay does what? eBay doesn't sell anything directly to us. It basically enables other consumers to sell to consumers. Okay, so it's a C to C business. Okay, consumer sells to another consumer. And IBM, have you ever bought anything from IBM? Probably not, because IBM doesn't sell stuff to normal folks like us. IBM sells things to businesses. So that's a business that sells to other businesses, and that's a B2B. So that's the World Wide Web. Okay. Now, to use the World Wide Web, we need a special program called the browser, the web browser. And in our next video, we'll take a look at all the different capabilities of that browser and how we can use it.